Welcome back to Heads and Tails for this, our season two. And we're delighted to have on the show this morning, James Dahl. James, very good to see you.
Lovely to be here, Walter. Thank you so much for asking me.
James, what I'm going to do is I'm gonna read out your a short and abridged biography, and you can tell me where I go wrong and what I've missed. Is that all right?
Of course.
So known, I suppose, most obviously as the 15th Master of Wellington College. Um, Prior to that, he was second master elect, as well as deputy head, pastoral, part of the admissions team and the marketing team. James educated at the Royal Grammar School in Newcastle and Haileybury, and then classics at Cambridge.
Mm.
A good flautist, pianist, and percussionist to grade 8, I'm told, in all three. Represented Cambridge at cricket and rugby. And started his career under Anthony Selden at Brighton College, where he was then head of classics at the tender age of 23, before becoming head of sixth form. Where have I gone wrong in that short biography?
No, that's it. That's it. And then off to Repton to be a housemaster for 7 years, which was the sort of bit in the middle, which was a wonderful experience too. But yeah, no, you're absolutely spot on.
Wonderful. Well, in a sort of linear manner, then I'm going to go back to the beginning, and we're going to tuck into some meaty issues in education in this country. But we're a mentoring business, as you know, James, and
Yes.
we think that young people should have mentors. You've had a really varied and long career within education. Who have been your mentors professionally?
Yeah, gosh, so many. But you've already mentioned the remarkable Anthony Selden, and as the person who gave me my first job when I graduated, through to I actually saw him 2 nights ago in London. Anthony has probably been the biggest inspiration and guide and North Star to me in my own teaching career. I'd say he's an unbelievably remarkable man, and is so generous with his time, and has been so loyal to me throughout my time. So Anthony would be very much up there. Funnily enough, when you become a head, you have to have a mentor as part of the HMC arrangements, and a delightful man who I first met at Repton when he became acting head there for a year or two is a guy called Andrew Trotman. He was head at St Peter's York and Teddy's Oxford. Andrew has been incredibly supportive and kind to me, particularly in the last sort of 4 or 5 years. But funnily enough, Walter, over COVID in the last few years, I think one of the great things that have happened within the boarding school sector, the independent sector, was that the relationship between heads became closer and closer as we just lent on each other for advice, for support, for mentoring. So I would actually pick out probably a dozen or so of the current heads on the circuit at the moment who I will very regularly reach out to for support, a conversation, and that increasing collegiality is one of the great things that came out of the last ridiculous 4 years.
They say being a head teacher is lonely. Is that true?
I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it is what you make of it. You make your own networks. You're a master of your own fate in that regard. And it's certainly. I moved up at Wellington, so I was one of the senior team, and then became head, and that was challenging because my relationship with people who'd been peers and friends suddenly became my direct reports. But if the culture is right, if your values is right, if as a team your relationships are in the right place, that's actually not too difficult. So I feel incredibly well supported and not lonely within my team. But also I think the networks that I've made beyond the school as well mean that for me headship isn't a lonely place. But I know that not every head is in that sort of fortunate space. So not as lonely as I feared it might be, actually.
You talked about culture there, and Anthony Selden then. He was well known for really developing and supercharging the culture at Wellington and making it the progressive school that it is. I've done him a disservice there, and how general I've been in that statement. As a head, then you take on what you inherit, and you have to put your own stamp on it. What is the Dahlism of Wellington, if I could ask you for a sort of yeah, sort of zeitgeist of your own culture at the school?
Yeah, I guess so. What I've inherited, which I'm definitely seeking to build on and grow, is a school with the most remarkable ambition and aspiration. It's a school that's heavily values driven. And that's not just 5 words that we put on the website. Everything from our admissions process to the way we recruit staff to our rewards and sanctions to most of our policies are sort of rooted in that. It's a school where we want every young person to believe that anything is possible, and will support them in that regard. It's a school with a global outlook, an international mindset. It's plugged into the world as it is today and going to be tomorrow, rather than trying to educate children in a model of the past. And I guess all of those things have been handed on to me. Where I'm trying to add value myself is particularly around that sort of equity and inclusion piece. So we are moving the school from being 60-40 boys girls to 50-50. That's really important to me. We've appointed 18 months ago our first director of EDI, really to come in and shine a spotlight and drive forward what we do there in terms of policy, culture, curriculum, admissions, that whole piece. And actually we wanted to do that even before George Floyd and the Black Lives Matter, and that obviously supercharged it. But that to me is really core to my own personal values. And I guess one of the other things, and this isn't a criticism of what went before, but just authenticity and humility are really important to me, as well as a leader and as a human being. And I really want every pupil who comes to Wellington to genuinely experience the authentic Wellington that we think it is. That's quite a big challenge, but that is an area that I want to focus on as well. I guess one more thing as well, we're having a well-being 2.0 conversation at the moment. Obviously, Anthony arrived in 2006-07, introduced well-being lessons, mindfulness. We're having a bigger conversation at the moment about the entire organisation, pupils, teaching staff, college staff, policies, curricula, everything. What does our 10-year well-being strategy need to look like at Wellington, and how do we deliver that? And that's something that's a bit beyond just happiness lessons, as they were termed back in the day, and some stillness in chapel from time to time. So some exciting pieces there.
Yeah, there's a lot to dig into that. I mean, authenticity is a word that we talk about a lot here. We came to visit you in 2016 when you were head of the admissions team, and you were so authentic in how kind you were. We were naive and had shiny suits on. The authenticity runs deep in the school, whether it's the character education provision you are leading on in this country. It also centers on how you assess, particularly for entry at 30 plus. Parents listen to this. There are stories of building castles with wine gums. Can you just explain briefly how you and Ed Venables in the last couple of years have shaped that assessment?
Yeah, fundamentally at the heart of our assessment vision is we want to treat young people as the rounded human beings that they are through the admissions process, rather than reducing them to a statistic or a number on a spreadsheet as measured in an examination or a test on one day. And it's a difficult balance, Walter, because Wellington is an academic school. Our results are very strong. We have a very ambitious curriculum that's delivered at pace, and so there is a certain degree of the fact that you need to have your wits about you as a young person to really come here and thrive academically. But we all know that ability, talent, potential is spread across all facets of us as human beings, and as a uniquely big, busy boarding school, there has to be a place for a diversity of character type, and different children who are going to bring different things to, for want of a better phrase, to the party. And so we're just as interested in that child who is able to show remarkable values, or has just done, their scores on the tests might be a bit lower, but they've just shown some immense thoughtfulness or potential, or they've just done some really interesting things. Because interesting kids become interesting to teach. They are interested, and so we've always tried to have a slightly broader approach to how we view children. And I guess the question we always get asked is, what child is the right fit for Wellington? And of course, our answer is, of course, well, there isn't just a one size fits all or one fit. We love children who are curious, who want to get stuck in at school, but that comes in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And if you're just going to get them to do a CAT test or the ICB pre-test, and that's it, then I don't. Now, is that mine?
Sorry, no, mine. You're back on.
So my heart sinks when I speak to other schools and they just put numbers in a spreadsheet, rank them highest to lowest, and draw a line across, because that must mean that those are the brightest and best students at the top. I think we all know that that's not necessarily the case.
Well, diversity of character type is just the most wonderful thing to have in a school, and that's a real reminder for parents who are looking at Wellington in that broad, diverse way of assessing. So we'll move on towards, I suppose, keeping to that character element. We are a character education business. For nerds like me who love this kind of thing, can you explain how you do character? How do you do essential skills? As you said, these have been often just paid lip service to. The set pieces that Wellington seem to have on character are plentiful. Could you just pick a couple of examples of how you deliberately teach character in the school?
I think the key thing is that you have a framework within which you're trying to operate, and you know what you're trying to do, and then you explicitly try and deliver it. So a lot of our thinking is around the development of character is influenced by the Jubilee Centre at Birmingham University, and the concept of virtues, and that's not just the traditional sort of. A lot of parents sort of think, doing characters like resilience, show a bit of character, bounce back. But actually, resilience is just one performance virtue that actually, is fits within a much broader model as well, because there are moral virtues as well. There are civic virtues like the collegiality and sense of togetherness. There's so we have a deputy head who's in charge of delivering character education. She works with all of the key leaders across our different areas of school life, the co-curricular, pastoral care, academics, and so on and so forth. And we are constantly trying to find places within the school where there will be teachable character moments. And that might be, in a sports pitch where someone has done or a team has done something particularly well together, and it's being mindful, it's stopping that, and actually being explicit in the way that you praise or discuss what a team has done or hasn't done. Or it might be actually, sorry, that's my email, but or it might be in and around failure. And we do a lot of work at Wellington around setbacks and I guess bouncing back from setbacks. One of our boarding houses, for example, the Blucher, has a failure wall in it, and the boys within that boarding house are encouraged to share setbacks that they've had within their life at Wellington, but then how that then shaped them to become better and where they ended up. So it's amazing. You have, literally it says things like, in the third form, I was in the B team for rugby, but I've just made my debut for the first 15 and I scored a try.
Nice. So James, can I butt in on that? I just have to ask then. I was going to ask you about an anecdote from your school career. I'd love, give me a failure that you've had within the last few years.
Oh my goodness me, where do I start?
This is on the spot, isn't it?
Yeah, so something that's oh my goodness me,
or perhaps as a young teacher, or even younger teacher, I should say.
Yeah, a setback that this was a setback, and I should perhaps, well, first of all, my entire first term of teaching was one complete 13-week-long failure. I went straight from university to Brighton College to work with Anthony, and I just knew nothing, and I was thrown in the deep end in the classroom, and I got absolutely everything wrong. But I had an amazing head of department. I had an incredible deputy head called John Spencer, who looked after me brilliantly, and I learned so much in that. But perhaps the lesson I learned, the setback I had in my very first lesson of teaching. So with the surname Dahl, I very often get asked whether I'm related to Roald Dahl, and I'm not, but I used to pretend that I was. And a boy called Marcus Hudson this is genuinely a true story, put his hand up. He said, "So you're related to Roald Dahl?" I said, "Well, funny enough, Marcus, I am. I'm his grandson, and Sophie Dahl is my cousin, and James and the Giant Peach was actually written for me when I was born," and it was all a complete lie. And then 2 days later, I was walking through the front court at Brighton College, and Anthony Seldon pulls me over, and he says, "James, I really want to introduce you to Mr. and Mrs. Hudson." And they said, "Oh, we can't believe you teach our son Marcus Latin, and that you're Roald Dahl's grandson. We used to live next door to Roald in Great Missenden, and did we meet you at his funeral?" At which point I'm standing there on my third day of my teaching career. Anthony's standing there. These two parents are standing there, and I sort of had to fess up in front of it. And that was an epic fail. And I learned very quickly, actually, out of that just the importance to be authentic and have integrity with young people, even though the short-term win of pretending to be Roald Dahl's grandson was something I was tempted towards. So yeah.
That is genius storytelling, and I'm sure your civic and moral virtues went sort of bananas after that. James, I've taken up almost too much of your time, so I'm going to leave you with two big chunky questions to finish.
Yeah.
And you can probably guess what those are going to be. So alongside BDales, Latimer has just announced that they will stop assessing students at GCSEs except for maths and English. What's your perspective on the debate? And part two of it is, how does the criticism around social mobility tie in to differing what students at 16 do between the state and the independent sector?
Yeah, it's a really difficult one. We over the last 3 years have done a very big curriculum review at Wellington ourselves, and we looked at our years 9, 10 and 11 curriculum, and we chewed over lots and lots of options. And funnily enough, one of them was to ditch all GCSEs apart from maths and English, and just to teach a whole series of Wellington created own courses, i.e. exactly what Latimer have announced. We stopped short of that. And I guess that the lens through which we approached that entire debate was actually one of intellectual curiosity. It wasn't so much a well-being lens. That we thought that actually this very dry, just teach to the test, GCSE, go around the treadmill, bash out the past papers to get as many 9s as possible, producing excellent results, but then getting children into the sixth form who are not very interesting or interested in and not very curious in the world around them. My goodness me, they smashed GCSE history out the park, but they weren't inspired or curious historians. So we took the approach to how can we make our young people more curious, and the approach that we've taken at Wellington is, well, we've rewritten our year 9 schemes of work, and we are creating a series of non-examined courses in years 10 and 11. So some of those non-examined courses are in the subjects that the students do for GCSE. So if you choose GCSE history, yes, you cover the syllabus, but then there will be a 4 to 6 week extension course within a course that we will teach that will take them way beyond the confines of the GCSE syllabus. And we hope will inspire and develop curiosity. And we've also created a whole suite of year 10 and year 11, what we're calling fragments courses, which are cross-curricular, multidisciplinary courses that specific teachers have created themselves. That serves to inspire and to feed young people's curiosity, and they're not going to get examined on it at the end of it all. But we hope that those additional courses will inspire young minds, and it will actually prepare our young people for the world of sixth form and university entry better. So what we've done is, in order to create space for those additional courses, we've gone down from a standard diet of 10 GCSEs to 9 GCSEs. But it's not that we're teaching less, we're actually going to be teaching much more, and it's going to be much more inspiring. So that's the take that we felt comfortable at the end of it all. But I do understand, because we had this conversation ourselves, I do understand why the team at Latimer, and I know Will Goldsmith at Bedales really well, I completely understand why they've adopted that approach, and I would back that. It's 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The wonderfulness of being an independent school and having that freedom to be able to innovate and pioneer and do things differently is actually one of the strengths of the sector. And I know that a lot of criticism. Catherine Burble-Singh was particularly outspoken about independent schools not being held to the same account as state schools. And whilst I understand where she was coming from on that, I also think that the benefit is that independent schools can ask these really interesting questions. They can experiment, they can pioneer, they can do things in a different way that might help shape the educational landscape of the future in a way that state schools can't. So that's sorry, that's a little bit of a just sort of me spouting out, but I think that's where I am on it.
It's a lovely balance and a perfect argument. I'm aware that you can't miss your midday meeting, so I'm going to leave you with one final question. You talk about the educational landscape of the future. Where do private schools, or what role do private schools play in the next 5 to 10 years with everything that may go on?
Yeah, I hope private schools will continue to play a really important role in the national debate and the landscape, our educational landscape. I don't see sector-wide what's probably almost certainly going to happen to our sector as an existential threat on a global level. I am really sorry that I think there will be some school closures, I suspect. In fact, Old Palace School in Whitgift, only a couple of days ago, it was announced that they're closing. That there will be some knock-on effects which will see the sector perhaps shrink a little bit. There'll be significant and ongoing consolidation within the sector of that, I have no doubt. I mean, Walter, you'll be well aware in London there's barely a prep school that hasn't been hoovered up by one of the private equity backed groups. But I'm heartened by Keir Starmer's recent announcements about the place that the independent sector has within the nation. I just hope that the way in which any fiscal changes or regulatory changes that are introduced doesn't emasculate the independent sector to such an extent that we can't continue to be this vibrant, pioneering, alternative provider within the country. So and certainly going back to your social mobility point, whatever the future holds, we are absolutely committed at Wellington. I know that a lot of the other independent schools are too, that work that we've done in terms of partnership, in widening access to children from a wider background, in terms of just those connections that we have with the state sector as a whole, we will not back down from those. In fact, I think we'll probably double down on those in the years to come. But I fear that for those schools where the margins are smaller, if they are going to have to make economies and savings in order to continue to exist as a school, would their partnership work, would their bursaries and their widening access, is that one of the things that they might cut in order to continue to exist? And I think that would be a real shame. So, just one of those many unforeseen consequences of a potential changing of the regulations for the independent school sector.
James, thank you for being so honest and for tackling questions that many perhaps wouldn't be so honest about. You talk about authenticity, and I can say from personal experience and from reputation, you remain one of the most authentic leaders in the sector, and you're doing God's work, if I may say so. And Henry and I enjoy watching the development of Wellington as an institution. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll speak soon.
Well, it's been a joy. Thank you so much, and I wish you and the team every success for the year ahead. The work that you've done, watching you grow since we met in my office back in 2016, has been a real joy, and the work that you do is phenomenal too. So there we go. The mutual love has ended, and I can go to my 12 o'clock.
Wonderful. Thanks, James. Bye.
Hey, Walter, bless you.